This was our second day in Yangshuo. Before beginning the outdoor activities we had planned, we decided to slow down and get familiar with the neighborhood around our guest house. What began as a simple walk nearby ended with a shared dinner that made this unfamiliar place feel much warmer. Hi, I'm Lan. Welcome to my channel. I share what everyday life is really like here in China. We didn't have to go far. With Fuqi in his arms, my husband crossed the road, and on the other side, we found a narrow lane for pedestrians and bicycles, lined with small fruit and vegetable stalls on both sides. Most of the vendors were elderly locals, and many seemed to be selling produce they had grown themselves. As soon as I entered the lane, I felt myself relax. There was something about all the fresh fruit and vegetables that made the whole street feel natural and full of life. And I found myself slowing down without even realizing it. Fuqi noticed that I had fallen behind and kept glancing back to check on me. My husband stopped with him and waited for me to catch up. In the end, we decided to put Fuqi in his carrier backpack. I carried him on my back, and we continued walking down the street. Meanwhile, my husband was using his phone to contact local guides and arrange our outdoor activities. When we turned a corner, we reached one end of a local market, where small storefronts on both sides were selling fresh fruit, vegetables, and other everyday food. I enjoy walking through markets like this, but actually shopping here is another matter. Prices are often not clearly marked, and bargaining is common. Since I'm not very good at negotiating, buying groceries here can feel like a challenge. My son rarely visits traditional markets, and he seemed much less interested in the atmosphere than I was. I could tell from his face that he was getting tired and no longer wanted to keep wandering from shop to shop. At that point, a bowl of noodles seemed like a much better idea than more walking. My husband and I decided to find a noodle shop so our son could fill his stomach and take a break. Tucked into an unassuming corner of the street, a small local noodle shop caught my husband's attention. It looked exactly like the kind of the place we call a Kangyin Guanzi in China, literally a fly restaurant, and similar to what English speakers might call a hole in the wall. Despite the name, I don't avoid places like this at all. They are usually expensive, and sometimes the most unassuming restaurants serve the most authentic and delicious local food. That was exactly why I was curious, and we went in with high hopes. My son chose a bowl of noodle soup that caught his eye, while my husband and I ordered the local Guilin rice noodles. When I carried mine to the table, it looked much plainer than I had expected. After a few bites, the flavor did not quite live up to my hopes, and the noodles felt a little too dry for my taste. My son's noodle soup looked more substantial, but after trying it, he decided the flavor was not really for him either. I couldn't help thinking back to my first trip to Yangshuo, when I had an incredibly flavorful and distinctive bowl of rice noodles at a small shop on the pedestrian street. Well, I guess not every hole in the wall turns out to be a hidden gem, at least not for us that day. Our one small consolation was that, before we left, the owner kindly gave us plenty of useful advice on where to go and what to do in Yangshuo. After thanking her for the recommendations, we left the shop and walked back through the market toward our car. Before returning to the guest house, we decided to buy some fruit. Since bargaining isn't my strength, this job naturally fell to my husband. He stopped at a fruit stall and asked the vendor about the prices. She warmly invited him to taste the fruit first, a simple way to let customers judge the flavor for themselves. Of course, make it a little harder to walk away without buying anything. He liked the taste, so he bought a bunch of wumpy fruit and some small banana. And yes, there was bargaining. Luckily, unlike me, my husband is very good at it. Altogether, the fruit cost a little over 10 yuan, around $2. Does that seem expensive to you? To me, it was actually a little cheaper than what I would pay in my own city. With the fruit in hand, we quickly returned to the car and headed back to the guest house. My son and Fuqi sat comfortably inside, enjoying the breeze along the way. When we returned to the guest house, the owner warmly invited us to share dinner with them. To thank them for their kindness, my husband and I borrowed the owner's electric scooter and went out to buy some food for the meal. Whenever I get on a scooter, I feel incredibly free. It's only when we travel that we can ride so casually through the streets and alleys of another city. We returned to the same shop where we had bought braised and cold dishes the day before. It was just as busy, which seemed like a good sign that the food was worth coming back for. My husband ordered a box of cold dishes, so the guest house owner would have one less dish to prepare. While we waited for our order, we noticed an elderly woman selling vegetables nearby and decided to buy some directly from her. Once the cold dishes were packed, we were almost ready to leave. But then we spotted a watermelon stall nearby and decided to take one back, chill it in the guest house owner's refrigerator, and share half with him as a small thank you. When we returned to the guest house, my husband carried everything we had bought into the owner's kitchen. The owner asked if there was anything we did not eat, then quickly began washing, chopping, and cooking the vegetables. There was no formality or fuss. He simply welcomed us into his kitchen and started preparing dinner. Watching him, I was struck by how genuine and down-to-earth they were. We had only just met, but their kindness felt completely natural. Before long, we were all sitting around the same table, sharing the dishes the owner had cooked and the food we had brought back. In that moment, I realized that sometimes a place begins to feel familiar, not because you have seen all its famous sights, but because someone is willing to make room for you at their table. This simple dinner made our second day in Yangshuo feel warm and complete. Stay happy, and see you in the next video.